No defense was accepted, only the cries of a human child, echoing beneath the darkened dome of the Galactic Council. Then silence, as a blinding white beam tore through the center of its forehead. Red blood sprayed across the sacred stone slabs, the same stones that had once borne the peace treaties of thousands of civilizations. The same floor that once symbolized a sacred oath. No blood shall ever be spilled in this chamber. But today, that oath was betrayed by the Council itself. Vokar Wraith, seated as High Arbiter, did not blink. His forearms rested neatly upon the obsidian table. Golden eyes burned like smelted metal, cold as a sentence written centuries before today ever arrived. Criminals are ageless. The law must be carried out. His voice echoed through the hall. The child's blood still dripped down the 13th step, a number once considered holy in the rites of founding. Mira Kale, humanity's representative, stood frozen. Her hands clenched so tightly they began to bleed. A whisper escaped her lips, barely audible through the rising storm across the comm channels. He killed a child. From low orbit above Earth, Thales Quinn watched the footage unfold, the final seconds of the trials before the feed was cut. Only blackness remained, but it was enough. Enough to stop his heart for a beat, enough to know the final line had been crossed. Beside him, Jun Terrell spoke softly, lips trembling. They won't stop here. They want to lock us in a box forever. There was no reply, only a slow, steady nod. Then Thales spoke, not loudly, but his voice resonated across every internal channel. Initiate the Dread Nova Protocol. Red alert lights blazed across the command station. The artificial ground beneath them shook, as if a sleeping beast had just awakened after centuries in chains. The deepest security layers began to unlock. Ancient symbols, erased from every surviving history file, lit up once more. Steel and memory rose together. Jun turned to Thales, his eyes searching for something certain. Are we really ready for this? Thales didn't answer, because in that moment, humanity no longer had a choice. A heavy screech echoed from deep underground. Metal grinding against metal like the sigh of a buried era being disturbed. The deepest security gate of Borealis Command Station began to shift. Centuries of dust trembled, sliding down the massive cogged grooves. The entire control chamber shuddered slightly, as if even the stone beneath them did not want to witness what was being awakened. Thales stepped in first. Light from the control panel swept across his face, reflecting in eyes as cold and deep as a black hole in space. Biometric ID confirmed Quinn-01, Omega-level Dread Nova Protocol recognized, initiating strategic warship unsealing. A chorus of activation sounds erupted and hisses, rotations, compressed electric pulses snapping loose, as if the planet itself were holding its breath to make space for what was about to return. Jun followed closely, his eyes locked on the glowing conduit lines running the length of the wall. Why wasn't this level ever documented? No maps, no names. Where exactly are we? Thales answered softly, almost too quiet to hear. This is the last place the Council could never reach. It was built before the intergalactic peace accords ever existed. The final door opened. A deep, muffled pop, followed by a blast of cold air that hit their faces like truth. Silver-white light spilled into view, illuminating a vast chamber, the foundational vault. Dozens, no, hundreds of warships lay dormant, encased in armor that shimmered like meteorite skin. They looked like nothing June had ever seen before, No rough plating, no insignias, no colors, just perfect geometric forms. Smooth, silent, as if they weren't built to fight, but to end all fighting. A single line glowed red on the far wall. "Dread Nova, the final creation of humanity." Jun stepped back, voice barely a breath. "This is... the legend? Sigma Fleet was real?" Thales placed a hand against the hull of the first ship. The armor reflected a warped image of his face. He said nothing, but in his mind he whispered, "It's time the stars remembered who their true masters were." One by one, systems came alive. Signal lights blinked open like eyes waking from centuries of sleep. Coolant vapor hissed and melted. Mist rose from the armor's seams. An army was waking up, and as the first warship lifted itself from its cradle, emitting its first pulse of energy in over 300 years, Jun turned to Thales. "They won't forgive us for this." Thales didn't blink, didn't look back. Still staring forward, he simply said, "And we won't need their forgiveness anymore." The first sound was not engines, not weapons, but a roar, low, dense, as if it came from the core of the earth itself. The first Dread Nova warship slowly rose from its steel cradle. Centuries of dust exploded upward, spinning into spirals like breath escaping a beast that had just opened its eyes. A titan had awakened. Jun gripped the railing tightly, his heart hammering. He had never seen any force bend space around it, as though even the fabric of the galaxy flinched. "All systems are responding, hull structure reaching maximum thermal stability, heavy-class weapons now drawing primitive energy feeds." The voice of the chief engineer rang out through the internal comms. Trembling, not from fear but from reverence, Thales stood atop the central command platform, his gaze fixed on the cascading teal-blue interfaces as status screens came to life one by one. "Bring the full fleet online. Priority to Dread Nova Prime and Echo-class units." From all four corners of the vault, pillars of light ignited in sequence. A chain reaction spread outward, like a nervous system being reawakened. "June," broadcast to the entire Alliance grid. June looked up, his fingers hovering over the encryption console, trembling. What do you want me to send?" Thales didn't turn around. He simply spoke, clear, final. "Let them know. The nightmare has returned." The first signal was sent. No warning, no protocol headers. Just a carrier wave, embedded with the ancient symbol of humanity. A symbol that had long been banned from display on any world under Council supervision. A symbol of defiance, three angular branches intersecting at a single point forming what had once been called the chaotic cross. It appeared, and it spread, across the galactic data mesh like a storm, a data storm, carrying the roar of Earth back into the stars. At a remote monitoring station in orbit above planet Doran, a lone officer stared at his screen. "Strange fluctuation levels. Wait, what is this code? This signal? It belongs to a species that's been erased from the grid." The screen went black. Then a single red line blazed across the interface. "We have returned!" Deep within Borealis, Dread Nova Prime let out a second roar. Jun stepped back, his eyes locked on the ship's massive frame. "Thales, that if we do this, there's no going back." Thales clenched his fist. "We're not going back. We move forward." Before them, the gateway into deep space began to open, for the first time in 3 centuries. Humanity left Earth, not to ask for permission, but to reclaim its place among the stars at the highest tier of the Intergalactic Council Hall, where decisions were thought to be unbreakable. The air felt colder than usual. The entire building was wrapped in triple-layered thermal shielding, and yet those seated inside could feel something slipping through the stonework and signal threads. A fear, primal. On the central tactical display, a flood of anomalous data streamed across. An unregistered signal has breached Kappa tide space. Patrol units in the Nithris belt annihilated in under 6 seconds. Satellite footage captured only distorted light flares. No race or technology identified. Then, the final image appeared. An ancient forbidden symbol slowly spiraling on a black backdrop. There was no need to explain. Every delegate in the chamber stood, some trembling, others growling deep in their throats. But none denied it. Humanity had returned. In the sealed war chamber, High Chair Velkar, the eldest of the council, his bio-neural mind linked to over 300 generations of interstellar intelligence, slammed his staff against the floor. They were expelled from the Alliance 3 centuries ago. This cannot be real. A Grun delegate stammered, his whiskers twitching with fear. But that was the Dreadnova Protocol. It only activates in response to civilian extermination. Velkar turned sharply toward him. You're suggested we triggered it? The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in, until a junior officer burst into the room, pale as ash. Sir, verified report. A minor human was publicly executed at Council headquarters yesterday. No sound, just a knowing. There was no more time to debate right or wrong. They had crossed a boundary humanity never spoke but always made clear. At the Alien Central Planetary Command, a war meeting was underway. How many ships still active on the third defense line? 45, but they're reporting complete nav failure under the enemy's signal sweep. Level 7 electronic warfare? No, sir. This is something beyond classification. An old general gripped his command baton. He had fought in the purging campaigns against the last remnants of human tech over 150 years ago. He knew the feeling. That chill down the spine when you realize you're not facing an enemy. You're facing a legacy that never forgave you. And then the central comms grid collapsed in perfect unison. Screens went black. Then a slow rolling signal appeared, each character encoded in ancient human language protocols. A single message. The Council will remember, Velkar gasped. His bio-eyes shifted to a dull, lifeless gray. Full system war declaration, extinction-level response. No one moved, because they all knew the Council could declare anything, but what was coming wasn't war. It was judgment, and this time, humanity didn't need forgiveness. They came to end the history that had tried to erase them. They came to end history. Velkar's final words had not yet faded from the crisis chamber's walls. But high above Earth's orbit, Dreadnova Alpha was still transmitting. Not a warning, not a threat, but a call. In the control center, Thales Quinn stood silently beside the core relay chamber. Jun Terrell worked rapidly, eyes scanning streams of encrypted waves unfolding like breath. Signal layer has passed restricted satellites, breaching outer Nithera's perimeter. Then he stopped. His lips moved. No words came out, because on the screen a reply appeared, slow, faint, like the voice of someone buried alive in their own forgotten sleep. Echo 19. Status: rebooting. Delta 3, awaiting directive. Omega null, restoring baseline systems. Jun clenched both fists, emotions surging without a name. Thales, these are warships, We declared lost? Thales neither nodded nor denied. He only stared at the woven data threads unfolding like ancient neural pathways. Not lost. They were told, only return if the call is heard. Far across the old human expansion sectors, those no longer marked on modern maps, buried deep under galactic dust, they began to stir. Brittle bio-casing cracked, tech ice fissured, and from the dark, old memories awakened. Not humans, not pilots anymore, but entities born to become willed memory. Back in the Dreadnought command chamber, Thales opened a transmission channel, an ancient tier. No language, no encryption, just memory. He sent one image, a child, messy black hair, eyes too young to understand. Then, a blinding flash, and everything ended. The signal spread across dimensional layers, touching every sleeping ship, every frozen AI mind, every fragment of memory imprisoned in a cold core, and names began activating themselves. Dreadnought Gamma, memory verified, launching Spectre-class recovery mode status hunt. Iron Dragon Geolock Tier 7, door opened. Target reset, the Council. Jun couldn't take his eyes off the screen. His voice cracked, like a sob. We just woke up, everything we buried, out of fear. Thales nodded softly. Not fear, timing. And now, it's time. The directional broadcast system slowly rotated toward a singular heading. No commands, no decisions. Everything had been written long before this day, just waiting for the first drop of blood to hit the sacred stone. All it took was a single drop of blood upon the sacred stone. And then they awakened. The signal burst forth like a neural impulse through the forgotten warship network. From fossilized hulls buried beneath Jupiter's storms to concealed military vaults beneath the ice of the Kuiper Belt, they all came online. The sound of grinding metal echoed across the void, like the ragged breath of those who had once been buried alive. Inside the command bridge of Dreadnought Alpha, a pale light cast across Thales Quinn's face. He stared in silence at the comm threads, interlinking on their own. No input, no command. They're choosing to reawaken themselves. Jun stood beside him, his voice barely a breath. They don't need our orders? No. Thales shook his head. Because they were never just tools. On the tactical display, each ship once marked as lost or dormant now reappeared. No call signs, no docking requests, no combat protocols, only this. They were coming home. Delta 9 returning on instinct, no commander. Ghost Line 12 recollection complete following the blood trail. Vanguard Zeta emotional sync confirmed, target the child killer. Jun turned to Thales. They're choosing their own emotions, making their own judgments. Thales' voice hardened. Because they were once human. Then, a slower signal emerged at the bottom of the list. No ID, no sound, just one line. Final awakening. Jun blinked. What is that? Why only one line? Thales didn't answer. He walked to the control console, placed his hand on the biosensor. From deep beneath the earth, something responded. Not sound, not data. A living presence. A holographic image surfaced. A cracked metallic core glowing from within. Like a mechanical heart, once sealed behind hundreds of layers of biolocks. Velkar once called it the heart layer, Thales whispered. It holds the last memory of Earth, from when we chose to sleep just to survive. The command floor trembled. On screen, a strategic map updated in real time. Hundreds of signals were converging, all aimed at a single location, the Galactic Council. Jun whispered, as if reciting a forgotten verdict. They're returning, not by command, but by emotion, by the pain of humanity itself. Thales closed his eyes, and when he opened them, his gaze was cold, like the vacuum of space. And that is what the Council was never prepared to face. No sirens, no emergency sessions. No one in the Council leadership realized the war had already begun, and it began with one finger, slowly, pressed onto a tactical map. Thales Quinn pointed to the center of the display, a cluster of red-layered security coordinates. Right there, in the Alpha Mirad system, the current seat of the Intergalactic Council. June hesitated. Are we really? That's no longer a question, June. Thales's voice wasn't loud, but each word sliced like steel through frost. When they shot a child through the head, in the center of the council hall, they started this war. Outside the command window, the reawakened warships rotated silently. Their weapon arms moved like living things. Their armor reflected the pale light of a distant sun. One by one, targeting systems locked on. No fire order, no speeches, just will transmitted through shared emotion. June stepped back. We can't control them anymore. We don't need to. Thales remained still, fists clenched. This is resonance. When humanity is violated, the memories that once had flesh and blood will define justice on their own. A faint chime rang. Data confirmed. Echo 19 had breached the outer patrol perimeter. From 3 parsecs out, it entered strategic stealth mode. No lights, no emissions. Just a shadow, crawling in silence through the folds of nothing. Jun swallowed hard. They won't have time to respond. No, Thales said. They won't understand until every satellite colony goes dark, until their supply depots turn to dust in seconds. And by then, they'll know that humanity's justice doesn't arrive with words. At that moment, inside Dreadnova's strategic hub, a new wave of signals appeared. Identifiers, from races once silenced by the Council. Zathari Colony, we follow the blood signal. Uranus Ruin, lead the way, humans. Autonomous Pyros, we remember the child. Thales turned slowly. He looked at the officers, the engineers, the soldiers, all silent but burning behind the eyes. They're not here because we made them promises. They're here because someone bled first. And they know, if they don't stand with humanity today, no one will be left to rise for them tomorrow. The final signal was transmitted, a single phrase. Covenant tier unlocked, and the warships began to jump. No noise, no warning. They vanished into the star lines, like blades cutting directly into the heart of power. In the middle of the bridge, Jun whispered, we just turned a memory into a weapon. Navigation systems offline. No return signal from the 8th stellar ring. Engineer Senna's voice trembled. The screen in front of her, blank, not from signal loss, but because there was nothing left to connect to. Korvek Station, one of the Council's strategic satellites, had vanished. No alarms, no explosions, no shockwaves, just a perfect emptiness, as if nothing had ever existed there. Inside the Council's high chamber, those towering seats of power were now shaking. Delegates, pale, panicked, their tendrils bleeding from clenched fists, had never seen humans wage war like this. No declarations, no envoys, only disappearances. Zorath, strategic coordination chair, slammed a claw on the stone table. This is a level 7 assault. Another delegate screamed, no! This is selective erasure. They're deleting us from the map, one point at a time. On board the Dreadnova, Thales hadn't moved. The cold screen light painted his face in pale silence. Jun turned to him. This is psychological warfare, isn't it? Thales nodded slightly. They don't know which ship will strike which target. They don't know which station, which planet will vanish next. And that is the fear humanity once lived with for centuries. A warning flashed. Signal from Echo 19. First strike completed. Echo 19. Core Vex neutralized. Erasing data backup systems. Phase 2. Advancing to Strategic Corridor Zeta. Jun whispered to himself, "There's no stopping them." "No," Thales said flatly. "Because this isn't tactics, it's memory. Each warship is a story. Every strike, a reminder." In the Council's central operations hub, everything broke down. False signals, tactical hallucinations, patrol fleets vanished into voids, never returning. Zorath muttered like a man unmoored. "They don't fight like any species in our database." A female observer hissed back, "Because they're not fighting to win. They're fighting so they're never underestimated again." A single tone rang across the human fleet. Slow, heavy like a bell tolling from the void. Jun turned to Thales. "We're next?" Thales didn't reply immediately. He simply raised a hand and pointed at a planet nestled at the center of the Council's comms network. His eyes in that moment weren't those of a commander. They were the eyes of a man with a blood debt to collect. "We're going to knock on the one place they believed was untouchable. And when that door opens, the entire galaxy will hear us." The first strike rang out, not as noise, but as a cold, piercing rupture that cut straight through the auditory layers of every Council comms center, still left alive. No warning, no authentication code. Just a tear in space, ripping the sky open with a streak of blue-silver light, like the blade of ancient justice. Above Velkar's central skyline, hundreds of warships appeared at once. No orders, no permissions. They emerged like phantoms, beings that had once died but had never truly forgotten. All bore the same mark, the symbol of humanity. Jun held his breath. Thales. All of those ships are Dreadnova? Thales didn't answer right away. He stood before the strategic interface, his gaze sweeping across the data streams, pouring in like a digital flood. Echo 19, Vanta 7, Omega Null. Names once erased from the records, now glowing on the command board like dying stars burning one last time. No nation tags, no alignment codes, only memory, the memory of rage. Meanwhile, in the Council's war chamber, Advisor Velkar stood frozen. The tactical display no longer showed familiar fleet formations. Instead, it had become a map of unrecognizable intent, belonging to no known Council system. "What the hell is happening?" he screamed, but no one answered. Because at that moment, every screen went black. Then a stream of unreadable code began to flow. A script so old, only humans remembered how to read it. "We heard you. And this is our answer." A synchronized assault command lit up the void, but not from a general. It came from Dreadnova's own mind, a mind once programmed to act only if an innocent child was killed. Thales whispered, not to anyone else, but as if confirming it to himself. "We're no longer the species screaming alone into the void." Jun turned, eyes wide. "You mean?" Thales closed his eyes. A single cold drop of sweat trailed down his temple. "I mean, we've awakened ghosts built to avenge an entire galaxy. And outside, beneath the ship's titanium shell, every targeting antenna pivoted at once, all pointing toward the first scream, the cry of the child they murdered, and the vow humanity never had to say aloud. The signal from Dreadnova had awakened something. Not just the ancient fleet, but something deeper, a stratum of awareness that had never been named. From the outer edges of the Archeos Nebula, waves of resonance began to stir. They didn't follow physical laws. They ignored quantum patterns. They responded as if listening. Thales, what are we touching? June's voice was dry, barely a whisper. On the screen, biological rhythms repeated like heartbeats. Not machine code, not life signals, but also not inorganic. It was learning how to become alive. This is the vital layer. Thales' voice barely audible. Outside the ship's hull, light filaments converged into symmetrical spirals, then unraveled, then converged again. A shape began to form, unfinished, indistinct, but pulsing, with rhythm. June stepped back, hands trembling. Thales, it's responding to our signal. It's trying to speak. Thales didn't take his eyes off the image. Reinitiate the dreadlink. Reduce pulse intensity. Switch the entire system to non-verbal sensory mode. June complied. On the interface, an eye slowly opened. Not a real eye, but a shared perception from the ship's consciousness itself. Then, a whisper. It filled the room, not in words, not in sound, but everyone shivered. It knows us. It's been here, before the council even existed. A silence stretched, and then the form spiraled once more, unwound and vanished, leaving behind a single line of data. Humanity has reached the vital layer. The light of the Covenant had not faded, but the space around them had changed. Thales stood silent. His breath melted into the low hum of the command chamber's core. June stepped back, unease in his chest. Something's wrong, Liara whispered, one hand over her stomach. She felt a heartbeat, not hers, but still beating inside. On the central display, ancient lines of code crawled up from the deepest corners of history. Exo proto 0x.form.recall.active. Jun frowned. That's a proto-summon code. The original class, the one that was banned because it was tied to a project erased from the Council's archives. Thales said nothing. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until he stood before the core scan gate. Then, a voice, not through the intercom, not through speakers, but directly into the minds of all who still carried human blood. Thales Quinn, biometric match confirmed. Prime directive verified. Recovery protocol activated. Jun staggered. They called you what? The bearer of the prime directive? Liara's breath trembled. That's not a name. That's a system designation. The wall behind them opened. No light, only forms, silent, layered in the dust of centuries. But their steps were solid as stone. Warriors who no longer breathed, but whose eyes still reflected the orders of the first time. One stepped forward, bowed its head. Summons received. We have waited 327 cycles. Thales closed his eyes, and inside him, the old memories stirred. An oath long sealed, a pact never signed, an army the world buried, not because they failed, but because they were too dangerous. He whispered, they once called us relics. Ghosts from wars that were never recorded. He turned to Liara. His voice cracked. But that child was the one who awakened them. A soft hiss echoed. The warriors knelt, not in ritual, but in instinct, from a species that was never meant to exist. And deep inside Thales' chest, something began to beat again. A sound echoed, not from any device, but from somewhere deep within the ship's structure, like a memory awakened after a long forgotten sleep. Jun looked up. The entire command deck seemed to contract, within a single breath. Control panels flickered. Ancient data was overwritten. Then, a command file opened. No one had ordered it. No one had authenticated it. The file existed on its own. Thales, what the hell is going on? June whispered, his voice cracking under pressure. Thales didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the symbol now glowing on the main display. A DNA strand, unmatched by any known biological record, a genetic sequence, never registered. "This is the final stratum," Thales said softly. "The data layer only allowed to activate if humanity faces extinction." June froze, his eyes locked on the spiraling code. "You mean we've just triggered the last legacy?" "It's not just a legacy." Thales turned, his voice steady, grounding the weight of the moment. "It's the seed of life." At that very instant, the ship's hollow projector came to life. A three-dimensional image unfolded before them. Not a map, not a tactical plan, but a biological embryo, growing, learning to exist. June stumbled back. It felt like witnessing the birth of a god. "Is that human?" "The next version, built to outlast the end." An electronic chime rang out. The system broadcasted, "Supreme Directive Gene detected. Requesting lineage verification, activating biostratum protocol." Thales placed his hand on the scanner pad. His veins lit up, not with natural light, but a glow that had once been forbidden. The seal of the biological vault hissed open. The air shifted. Gone was the sterile chill of space. What followed was the breath of first life. A newborn's cry echoed through the chamber. June collapsed to his knees, choking on emotion. Thales whispered, "This is why we were made." He closed his eyes. Not to win, not to avenge, but so that something could go on. The space between stars was never truly silent. Humans had simply stopped listening. But now, as those who had vanished returned, every sealed memory and began to knock on the door of reality. Jun sat frozen, eyes locked on the navigation chart. The entire map seemed to breathe. The light points didn't stay fixed. They pulsed, spiraled, then gathered into a strange alien pattern. "Thales, have you ever seen this before?" Thales slowly nodded, his eyes fixed on the shape. Like a haunting symbol from prehistory. A spiral mesh. Something once scratched into the walls of ancient caves. Something erased from every archive after the deep image network collapse of 2074. It's not a tactical formation. It's a summoning ritual. Jun whipped around. "A what?" "Human memory isn't just data. It leaves traces in the brain and machines, in the very fabric of the universe. And something is reading them." At that moment, from the depths of Dreadnova, a voice echoed. Not an AI, not synthetic, but a human voice. Long dead. "Thales," June stiffened. Who just said your name?" Thales didn't blink. "That was my sister." A recording played. Laughter, heavy breathing. A plea cut short by the sound of space tearing itself open. The final transmission of the Iden 7 crew. Thales clenched his fists. They vanished while monitoring the outer biological ring. No bodies, no black box. June turned back to the map. The lights were forming the shape of a human face, a silent visage drifting through the void. "It's not them coming back," June whispered. "It's their memories, calling themselves home." No one could remain calm anymore, even as Dreadnova hovered still among the stars. The command deck flooded with waves of ancient code. Languages long forbidden, character strings that had appeared only once before. During the Mirror City incident on the planet Vela, Thales froze, and for the first time since the war began, fear filled his eyes. They didn't return to fight. They returned to warn us. A symbol blinked on the control panel. Final stratum being accessed from outside the system. And at that very moment, the first signal echoed from a place with no name. Yet every soul could feel it. The nightmare had just begun. The forbidden data stratum had opened. The lost forces had returned. But that was only the beginning, because beyond the outer shell of reality, a wave unlike anything recorded began to spread. It carried no heat, no images, no signal on any radar. And yet, everyone felt it. Jun was the first to jump to his feet. Thales, something is watching us. Not through screens. Not through signals. It's looking straight through our minds. Thales didn't respond. He stepped toward the central coordination table, his eyes locked into the depths of space. Dreadnova trembled, not from impact, but as if the ship itself was remembering. Initiate replay of Stratum 13's trigger protocol. Directive, Echo Void. Jun froze. Stratum 13 was never meant to be opened. It wasn't for warfare. It was made to contain things. No one was allowed to know. Thales turned. But now, we can't contain it anymore. Click. The Echo Void stratum activated. The entire command deck was swallowed by an unnatural black. The screens displayed only a slow-moving spiral, a stream running backwards through time, from the present to the origin. And then, an image appeared, not of humanity, not of any known civilization, but of an ancient intelligence, sealed away. June, I see it, Thales. Something was waking up. It had no voice, but the energy pulses radiating from Dreadnova carried a question. Do you still remember why you were created? Jun stepped back, his hands trembling. Thales, this isn't them. Thales nodded slowly. This is what all the lost fleets encountered. And the only thing they could do was lock it away with their own existence. A single heartbeat of silence. Jun whispered, but now, it's being called again. An ancient phrase appeared in midair. Final directive of Stratum 13. Reverence. Thales clenched his fist. Every control signal on the bridge shifted into lockdown mode. Open multi-layer links. Summon all ships under Dreadnova protocol. Jun tilted his head, uncertain. But if the reverence fails... Thales didn't look at him. He stared straight ahead, at the spiral turning slowly in the heart of the galaxy. Then there's nothing left to return to. There are stories that don't end with war. No victory needed, no defeat required. Only one thing matters. That someone remembers a species that once wandered the stars, not to conquer, but to sow what no machine could ever be programmed to replicate. Memory, emotion, faith. And when they were forgotten, they did not rage. They simply slept in silence. But across nameless constellations, they left behind a whisper, hidden deep within layers of waves no one remembers how to decode. If you, the one watching this, ever believe that humanity is more than a species, it is a living idea of hope, of memory, and of something good that must be remembered. Then subscribe to HFY Stories Archives, where every story is an echo in the dark, a reminder to the universe, we were here, and we will return. Stay with us, so that one day when humanity speaks again, the galaxy will fall silent just to listen.